Good morning, guys, and welcome to our day 2 of Pesach or Passover. Obviously, running simultaneously to Easter right now, but Passover is the real season, and so I just want to continue our journey. So over the next, Passover goes for it goes for 8 days. So it actually goes over sort of 3 feasts. There's sort of 3 feasts in 8 days, but what I want to do is just like every day of this 8 days, like yesterday I had a much larger kind of teaching around Passover, but today I just want to take a bite-sized look at one aspect of Passover that I was alerted to this morning, just in my thoughts and my thinking, so I just want to unpack that for maybe like 5 or 6 minutes or whatever. You never know. But so Passover, one of the things that's central to Passover is the next generation. So talking about children of the next generation, and so that was pretty key. And even in the kind of formal aspects of Passover being celebrated to this day, they really include children. And obviously it's about the continuity of generations. And like the fact that they'll be passing on these great teachings, these great life lessons into the next generation. Because if you remember yesterday, I was speaking about that this is a meal to be celebrated forever or for all time, and so that's going to cross many generations. But what it did do is it alerted me to the fact that, for so long what we have found in churches and the experience of, and even outside churches, is that the young are viewed as, not as integral as God wants them to be. But we think, I think about the images of Jesus with the children. He always said to them, you guys get it. You guys get it. You don't get caught up in your adultness, and you don't get caught up in the things that sort of distract you and take you away from me. Essentially, they have, children have an imagination and an excitement and a passion, and they don't really care what people think. My wife's an early childhood teacher, and that's how kids are. They'll talk to a stranger. They're out there. They'll do that. Like yesterday, I was sitting there talking to 2 little girls while I'm picking up Liana from work, and they're just doing a hello goodbye game. And it was, they didn't know me, but they saw me as innocent. They saw me as someone they wanted to engage with. And there's obviously dangers to that, and I don't want to preface that, but I just want to say that, children are so important. In Timothy, I just want to read chapter 4, in 1 Timothy chapter 4, verse 12. It says, "Don't let anyone think less of you because you are young, but be an example to all believers in what you say, in what you believe, in love, in your faith, in your purity." This may not be referring to the children of children, but it's definitely sending a message that don't despise the young, because the young have greatness, have great ability to pour into the future. It's pretty amazing to think. Like, I think we create a structure where we kind of separate the young, and they have this separate kind of experience to the adults, and we call it Sunday school, and there's nothing wrong with Sunday school, but it's just saying that there's a lot of separation. And I think what I found in my study of Passover or Pesach was that children were so central to this meal. Actually, they were, the thing that set off the actual meal, which was amazing. It's like what they did was, part of Passover was they had the flatbread, right? And the flatbread would set the start of Passover. And one part of that flatbread is actually divided into three, which is, the fathers of Israel, Isaac, Jacob, and Abraham. But what they did is they took one portion of that flatbread, which is called afikomen, and they hid it. They hid it away in the house or wherever they were having Passover, and the children were tasked with the concept of going to find it, a treasure hunt. Kind of interesting considering what we do at Easter. We have a treasure hunt for chocolate, for eggs. What they did was they had a treasure hunt for flatbread. Now, it might not sound as nice as chocolate, but they had a treasure hunt where the kids would go out and they would find this flatbread, which was a symbol of that there'll be no sin in the house, no yeast in the house, and that's why it was flatbread. But what they would do is they'd go off and they'd have this treasure hunt and find this bread. And it wasn't until that bread was found and brought back to the table that the Passover meal would begin. So it's funny that I think of we do a treasure hunt and it's kind of to entertain the kids and it's their kind of part, and it's almost separate to what the adults do. It's sort of like, oh yeah, this will entertain the kids for a little while. But in Passover, it's so much different. It's about actually incorporating and bringing the children into the story of Passover, into the story of Yeshua ultimately and of Jesus. And so, yeah, as they go and they search out the house, they bring back that bread, and that instigates the Passover feast. Also, what was really interesting was as they went into the Passover feast, there was actually 4 questions that were asked, and also these questions were asked. They were asked by the children. So it shows me that there's a teaching behind in the traditions of Passover that are so much more rich than what we find in the Easter traditions. It actually brings in the children, and they are tasked with the questions of the 4 questions that are asked at Passover. So the first one is, they were asked, why do we eat unleavened bread? And that kind of, it's obvious, isn't it? Because they've just gone and engaged and found this flatbread in a treasure hunt, and now they've brought it back. And so they asked this question, and obviously I just touched on it there. And so what would happen is the father of the house would respond to the questions in front of the people that he's hosting, and they'd bring understanding around that question. And that would follow with 3 other questions, which was about the different parts of the meal. So why do we eat bitter herbs? Why do we dip our food in liquid? Why do we eat in a reclining position? They're the 4 questions that are asked in the Passover feast. And the reason they ate the bitter herbs is because it was a reminder of the slavery. It was a reminder of the connection to where they'd come from, and if that was the first Passover, that actually, that actually was a direct correlation to the slavery that they were in Egypt. But it's also then years down the track, this meal continues on. It's actually about remembering the slavery of our people, and obviously that slavery story continues, throughout history for the Israel nation and for Christians, for a Judaism and Christian background. And then they say, why do we dip our food in liquid? And the liquid is actually salt water. So you actually got to dip your food in this salt water. And once again, a reminder that, what is salt water? Salt water is a correlation to the tears cried. And I'm imagining that it wasn't that easy to live in the situations that those guys were living in. And so not only are they reminded of the bitterness of slavery, but they're also reminded of the tears that were cried before them. And so it's a direct connection, like straight away. You're not isolating this situation back to like one time in history, but actually across the generations. And so, so there's this really a lot of importance. And then I love this one. It's really quite funny. It says, the fourth question is, why do we eat in a reclining position? It's a funny place, kind of eating the way you eat in a reclining position. We're told to eat upright and nice and proper. But in this case, in Passover, it's actually, you got to eat, relax, recline, back in your chair, all this sort of thing. And whether that's a literal action as a result, that's up to you how you want to eat. That's fine. But what it was about that reclining was about wow, we're no longer in slavery. We're actually in freedom. We have been put in a situation where we're going to be free. We're not under under slavery. So freedom, and I said yesterday, talked about Passover being often called a festival of freedom. And we know obviously the current world we live in right now is hasn't been as free as we'd most hoped. So I just wanted to sort of take a moment just to kind of to bring a bit of a contrast, really, because I think so often we underestimate our young. And I know that this Passover, the one that Liana and I are hosting, I want to bring this into it. I want to make sure that the kids are central to what is going on. And then it's not this is the adults thing, this is the kids thing, but actually we're informed by each other and we learn off each other. And I think about it in the world context right now, when we've got mentoring that happens peer to peer and friend to friend, rather than generation to generation or father to son or mother to daughter. And, honestly, I believe, and this is obviously my opinion, I believe that this is the reason that we have so much breakage in society and broken relationships. And it's because we've let go of the kind of the order and the structure of learning, of how to gain wisdom. You don't look to gain wisdom from your mate that's next door to you. Like, you gain wisdom from the grandpa that's gone through war and has known what it truly means to be in slavery, truly knows what it means to be, the livelihood's really affected. You might go to your mate for fashion advice, or something like that, because you're probably not going to wear your grandpa's clothes. But the deeper things, the things that shape your identity, the things that make you who you are, I think they're the things that we go generation to generation, the things that we want to take on and carry on. And so, so I just wanted to take this morning just to kind of, as I said, every day, probably do about a 10 to what looks like 15-minute kind of chat with you, just about different aspects of Passover that you may not know in the lead up to our event on the 23rd of April, which will be at Mount Jagged, on a beautiful farm property. And if you want details, please DM me any of my socials, and or on the mobile if you've got my number. And we look forward to having you there and being part of it, and you actually get to experience, and your kids, get to experience that they're an integral part of this beautiful meal in history called Passover. So blessings and shalom today. Enjoy second day of Passover, and may you be enriched in His presence and in all that He offers. And Lord, that is my prayer for today. So bless you, and we'll be chatting tomorrow about the same time. All right, see ya.